Full house. Good morning, everyone. Great to be back. I can hear the mayor's voice. Good morning, the mayor. Indeed, it is a good morning. First of all, I do want to acknowledge the mayor of the city of New York, Eric Adams. I'll be introducing him in a couple moments, but thank you for your partnership, and that is a word that may be overutilized in some parts of the world, but I don't think it's ever been overused when it comes to relationships between a governor and the mayor of New York. So that partnership is genuine, so thank you for being here. Also, we are fortunate to have Speaker Adams here as well, and I want to thank her for her commitment to public service and the leadership she has to display in her awesome responsibilities. So Speaker Adams, great to see you as well. Also joined by the Commissioner of the NYPD, Commissioner Sewell. We've been together often, and I want to thank her for what she does to just give people that sense of security that you bring to the professionalism and the team of individuals that you work with. So I just always want to give recognition to you for your great work, Commissioner. Steve Nigrelli, our first Deputy Superintendent of State Police, representing our state police. They've been very involved in what we're talking about here today. And also Superintendent Bruin, who could not be here today, whose name actually graces the Supreme Court decision that we're talking about. I know that the Senator Myrie will be joining us, and Chantel Jackson may or may not be here. I'm not sure if they made it in yet. Okay, Chantel, great to see you. Have a seat. Got the baby here. It's going to be a good day. And also Rosanna Rosado, our Commissioner of the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services. Thank you for being at our side as we navigated these turbulent waters. And we also have advocates who were very helpful in the whole process of writing legislation that we believe is responsive to the Supreme Court decision. And I want to thank Samuel Levy, Senior Counsel to Everytown for Gun Safety. You've been joined at the hip with Everytown since our many other initiatives on gun safety. Dave Pacino, a Deputy Chief Counsel from the Gifford Law Center as well. So here we are. Today we're here to provide an update on what our administration, working with the Adams administration, has been doing to ensure responsible gun ownership, as well as protecting New Yorkers from gun violence. And I wish this wasn't a topic we needed to talk about today. Had there not been a decision by the Supreme Court at the end of June, we would not be having this conversation. But the reality is that we're in the middle of a national gun violence crisis. It's claimed the lives of too many Americans, too many New Yorkers, and has inflicted trauma on communities all across our state. And I'm not just talking about New York City. I have been to our upstate cities and visiting them, and also dealing with the specter of what's going on in our smaller communities as well. So the pain has touched everyone. There's no one immune from the pain of gun violence, whether it's the day-to-day gun violence that plagues cities, plagues individuals, families, from here to Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo, or the mass shooting that occurred in Buffalo on May 14th when an 18-year-old with nothing but pure hate in his heart took the lives of 10 black New Yorkers who were doing nothing more than shopping in a grocery store 10 minutes from where I live in the city of Buffalo. So that tragedy was still raw, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of anger, a lot of uncertainty. And what is so shocking, just weeks after that traumatic event, the Supreme Court decided, at a time when people are still mourning, they decided to strip away the rights of a governor to protect her citizens from gun violence by striking down a 100-year-old law that limits who can carry concealed weapons. So at a time when we're having a national reckoning on gun safety, what we can do to protect our citizens, that decision wasn't just negligent, it was reprehensible, reprehensible. And they removed long-standing limitations that we used here in New York. No one had challenged before, we live with it. And it took away limitations on who can carry them, taking away the ability to say, maybe not you, because of a propensity that you've demonstrated, or a record, or what rational people would agree. Someone should not be able to be licensed to carry a weapon, not just carry a weapon, concealed weapon. And they took away that right, but we don't need more guns on our streets. We definitely do not. We've been working very, very hard, removing thousands of guns that have been coming into our streets illegally from other states. We don't need guns on our streets. We don't need people carrying guns in our subways. We don't need people carrying guns in our schools. We don't need people carrying guns in our places of worship. We don't need them carrying them into bars or restaurants, because that'll only make people less safe. And here's the proof, because everyone has this theory about the good guy with a gun in his hand and how that's going to prevent violence. And I'm here to just dispel that right now, once and for all. We've had our sensible gun safety laws and concealed carry laws that we've had on the books for over 100 years. With that law, we are the 5th lowest in the nation in terms of firearm-related deaths. Want some more proof? Let's look at the numbers of other states where people can have weapons, conceal them, carry them where they like. Mississippi has 28 deaths per 100,000 by firearm. Louisiana, 26 per 100,000 deaths by firearm annually. 25 per 100,000 in Wyoming. Missouri, 24 per 100,000. Alabama, 23. You know what New York State is? 5.3 deaths per 100,000. So this whole concept that a good guy with a gun will stop the bad guys with a gun, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up. And the data bears this up. So that theory's over. Yet the Supreme Court, with all this data, with all this knowledge, with a law that was working just fine in our state, decided to take us backwards, possibly opening the door to more tragedies when people can carry guns concealed. Makes it harder for law enforcement. I'm sure you'll hear about the challenges that this has created now for our law enforcement community. But we're not deterred. We didn't back down. We stood up and fought back. And as governor, my #1 responsibility is keeping New Yorkers safe. That's why when it came down to the Supreme Court decision, we were ready for it. We knew this case was on the docket since last fall. We work with legal experts from all over the country. I mentioned the Gifford Center, Everytown, New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. We went to academic institutions. We went to thought leaders. And we prepared for this moment. And what I had to do in the aftermath of that decision, even though the legislature was done for the session this year, due back in January, I said, got to call you back. You've got to come back. We need you. Your state needs you right here, right now. So we called an extraordinary session. That's what it's called. And it was an extraordinary session because the legislature, and I want to thank our leaders, Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins and Speaker Carl Heastie, for bringing everyone back with that sense of urgency, which was genuinely real. And what we had to do is come back within days and say the Supreme Court justices, those in the majority, want to take us backwards. We're not going there with you. We're going to stand up, pass smart legislation, and that's what I signed immediately. So what did we do in the aftermath? That's what we're here to talk about today. We needed some time to have regulations that were thoughtful. We know a lot of people are watching what we're doing here across the nation. So I directed our team here in the governor's office, the state police, Division of Criminal Justice Services, to work with every single stakeholder who'd be affected by this. Yes, the county clerks, county executives, sheriffs, local law enforcement, firearms dealers, and instructors, to let them know we would have a thoughtful, legally sustainable plan to address this. So our team spent literally hundreds of hours. We devoted more time to this than almost anything else because we had to get this right. Hours and hours and hours of work, constantly meeting. And I want to thank my extraordinary team. They persevered, they pushed. We had regular meetings where we had benchmark spreadsheets, and I'm saying this is due on this date, but let's get it done earlier. So it was an intense process, but it was necessary because, again, we had to get this right. We had to get this right. So I'm proud to announce that the changes to the law will go into effect this week, most of them taking effect tomorrow, which is why we're meeting today. And these will strengthen the background checks and the gun safety training requirements, prohibit concealed carry in secure, sensitive locations, and require permit renewals every 3 years instead of 5 years. And on September 4th, a law to raise the age to purchase a semi-automatic weapon we raised to 21. That goes into effect. We passed that in the aftermath of the Buffalo massacre because none of us think that a teenager should be able to purchase an AR-15. Actually, most of us think that no one should be able to purchase an AR-15, but we are constrained by federal laws. So let's get into the details of what these laws will do. Under the Supreme Court's ruling, they would say anyone who wants a concealed carry permit could easily get one. We had a standard in place that you had to have a proper cause. You have to have a rationale for it. So we have to deal with the fact that we believe that people who now will be able to secure these under the ruling should go have a more comprehensive background check, an in-person interview, household members' contact information, as well as reviewing social media. They also will undergo a 16-hour classroom training and a 2-hour live firearm training safety course. And we'll be the first state to require training for firearm permits, but it makes sense. Under the old laws, some counties required, but many did not. So it's time to standardize this across the state of New York. We developed new standards. It'll include training to make sure that gun owners have the skills, the knowledge necessary to carry, to store their guns. Because we're not stripping the right away, we're just saying you have to do it in a very responsible way. And we believe that the training is going to be significant. And educate them about other topics, how to keep people safe. Conflict de-escalation, because when people are in conflict and they happen to be legally carrying concealed weapons now, there's a high risk that it'll escalate into something that is going to be fatal. Talk about suicide prevention, use of deadly force. And all this is going to occur because of our response, that we're now going to raise the bar and make sure that people are truly responsible gun owners once they receive a permit. And what else did the Supreme Court do to jeopardize safety in our streets, which is the only way you can, the only conclusion you can draw from what they did? They said that those who have concealed carry permits can pretty much take them anywhere they want. In response, we had to come up with a list of sensitive locations where guns are prohibited. These sensitive locations will include schools, colleges, daycares, libraries, restaurants that serve alcohol, other places, parks, places people visit, work. We have a whole list. We have a long website. Encourage you to look at that. And also, we added Times Square. The Supreme Court said you cannot carve out the entire borough of Manhattan, for example. We did not. We were rational. We asked the city to partner with us, the city council, and I thank you. You'll hear more about what they have done to make sure that people coming to a place as iconic and heavily trafficked as Times Square will feel safe. And that was important to all of us. So that is going to be in effect as of tomorrow as well. We also bolstered our safe storage requirements. Our law created the presumption that if someone doesn't want to carry a weapon, someone in a store doesn't want someone to carry a weapon in, they won't be able to do so. We left firearms in vehicles have to be locked. A lot of firearms are stolen out of vehicles. They have to be locked. And also, if you live in a household with children under 18, the gun has to be stored legally. So other changes are coming. As I mentioned, 18-year-olds not being able to purchase assault weapons, that's good. We're making sure that information is out there. And I want to make sure that there's a public education campaign so that people who do legally possess this now under the Supreme Court ruling will understand that there are rules of the road that you must follow. And law enforcement will be making sure that you do follow these. That is what we're doing here in the state of New York to make sure that people are safe. So I want to thank everyone who is involved in this. And I'm going to play a video in a couple minutes that shows all the rules that we had to be thoughtful about. We had to make sure that there's frequently asked questions section so you can reference them. And we're going to continue making sure that as a result of the Supreme Court decision, that we'll fight back. We'll make sure that New Yorkers are safe. But it's not just enough to have the strongest gun laws in the nation. We also had to double down on other solutions that we know make sense. That's why in our budget, we have an historic $227 million investment in gun violence prevention. It is far better to prevent the crimes, giving alternatives to young people, trying to have safe streets, investing in our law enforcement so they have the tools they need, which we believe is an important priority. So we've tripled the amount of money that have been allocated in the past for these purposes. We also expanded our red flag laws. We talked about this. The red flag law, common sense, opposed by many, which is shocking to me. But all it does is say when you see the signs, the dots are there waiting to be connected. you have a right to connect them and say, yes, based on these signs, this individual could do harm to themselves or to others and therefore should not have access to firearms. So we expanded those laws. The number of orders of protection, extreme risk orders of protections filed by our own state police is up 94%. It's extraordinary. We talked about what we're doing here in the city. Suffolk County is #1 in the state in terms of issuing these red flag orders. They're saving lives. But also we want to make sure that we are thoughtful in our response. So we also have worked on investing in communities that have high rates of crime. We know where they are. You can draw a map around them. You know exactly where they are. But those communities have been under siege. There's a lot of trauma in those communities. There's people who need mental health services and support services. Let's help the people who live in those neighborhoods so they don't have to flee. Let's stabilize those neighborhoods as well. Also, we're reporting, as a result of getting guns off the streets, there are substantial decreases in the homicide rate in this state. That is progress. My concern is, with the change in Supreme Court law, we want to make sure that they continue to decline. That's why these changes were so necessary. So this real progress has been made. We'll never stand here and say the job is done. But I want New Yorkers to know that we'll always stand up, protect their lives, their livelihoods, their families, their neighborhoods, because that's our responsibility. It's one I take very seriously, one the mayor takes very seriously. So that's what we're laser focused on. So all of us are tired of reading the headlines. It has to stop. We have to protect our citizens. And I can guarantee you a full-on, all-the-above approach, working with partners where relationships did not exist before, bringing in our federal partners, state, local. We're doing it all over the state of New York and making real progress. So we're not just talking about wanting these changes to happen, we're making them happen right here. So with that, I want to thank, again, our extraordinary team. I'm so impressed with what you brought to this unbelievable effort here to try and undo the harm done by the Supreme Court of the United States to the people of the state of New York and other states. And we're not giving up the fight. This is too important. So what I'd like you to do is see our quick public service announcements so people who are in search of a concealed carry permit know that there are rules to follow and make sure that they do it responsibly. So with that.
For more than 100 years, New York's gun laws have kept our communities safe. This year, the Supreme Court struck down those laws, putting lives at risk. But we fought back. New York passed common sense restrictions to keep guns out of our schools, restaurants, hospitals, and entertainment venues. Starting September 1st, it is a crime to bring a gun to these and other places where we pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Learn more about New York's strengthened gun laws and how we are protecting New Yorkers at gunsafety.ny.gov.
In addition to our public safety campaign, you'll be seeing announcements everywhere, but also identifying specific locations such as parks and others where the guns are not allowed. And an important part of that was Times Square. And again, I want to applaud the city for working so closely with us, but also taking on the responsibility of identifying the parameters, getting the message out there. And again, that's what a real partner does. We support each other. And with that, I'd like to bring up the mayor of the city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams. Thank you.
Really want to thank the governor for taking a surreal moment with a real response. I never thought from the days of watching cowboy movies as a child of leave your gun at the door would become a reality in the state of New York. And it was a challenging time when we saw the Bruen decision handed down. I remember speaking with the governor, and she immediately moved into action and stated that we were not going to wait until this terrible, terrible Supreme Court decision created a state of havoc in our city. And I cannot thank you enough, Governor, for the leadership that you showed. Because as this decision was pending, I stated it over and over again, it was keeping me up at night. I know the reality of having 475,000 people in Times Square in any given time. And any given time, that decision stated to them that they can carry a firearm. And to those with this insidious belief that you could have public safety with quick draw, who can draw their firearm the fastest, that is just not a reality. And the commissioner and I, we are committed not only to continue the success of removing over 4,700 guns off our streets that were illegally carried, but to pivot and shift as we face this new reality. And we could not have brought together a better team of people who are committed to the prerequisite to our cities and state prosperity, and that's public safety and justice. And I want to thank our speaker, Speaker Adams, for her role as we now move to the implementations on many parts of the law in the city area. We need her more than ever now. Her steady hand and leadership is going to allow us to continue to pivot here in the city of New York, where 8.8 million people are dependent on our response to this decision that was handed down by the Supreme Court. And the numbers are horrific that the governor just stated. Those states that have lived with the open carry decision or mindset are far above our state when it comes down to per 100,000 people or the victims of deaths around guns. We've gotten it right. The Supreme Court, instead of overturning what we have been doing, they should have duplicated what we have been doing, and we would have saved lives in the process. And the state lawmakers who immediately responded to this terrible decision, we want to say thank you. The brewing case already took gun violence that is already a threat to our safety and freedom, and it aggravated how we respond to it every day. The New York City Police Department, the state police, and the city superintendent, thank you for being here. The response of these agencies, we will collaborate to make sure we continue to pursue our combined goal of keeping our city safe. The Supreme Court has taken dead aim at the safety of New Yorkers. They've placed us in the line of fire, and we must respond accordingly. The radical decision that they made endangers us all. But here in New York, a place known for freedom, openness, and diversity, we will defend ourselves. New eligibility requirements for concealed carry is going to play an important role in the restrictions on the carrying of concealed weapons in sensitive locations will go into effect tomorrow, September 1st. And today, we're here to talk about the city's outreach campaign, not only through PSAs, but what we are going to do on the ground to educate the public. We want them to know about the new laws and what they mean for New Yorkers. The city is posting signage around Times Square, informing people that the area is a gun-free zone. Think about that. We have to actually say that in our city. We have to actually say we're a gun-free zone. And then licensed gun carriers and others may not enter with a gun unless otherwise specifically authorized by law. You can see from this map here, the dots are indicators where the signs are going to be located. Strategically placed entry points so that people will know when they enter the area they're entering a gun-free zone. And the circles are reflections of that. The signs will also include posters like this one you see here, Times Square, gun-free zone. You cannot tell me this is not a feeling of being surreal. In our city, we're posting these signs. Gun-free zones. And other messaging options including mobile electronic signs and entry points to Times Square. As a mayor and a former police officer that actually patrolled in some of those communities, I want every New Yorker and those visiting our city to be aware of these laws and to respect them. The Supreme Court's decision have opened an additional river feeding the sea of gun violence. But we're going to continue to use our laws to dam the rivers over and over again. We're fighting the flow of illegal weapons coming into New York City and prosecuting those who sell them illegally. Using the power of our legal system to challenge the online retailers who illegally sold and are continuing to sell ghost guns to customers in New York. We're going after them and working closely with state and federal authorities to prosecute gun crimes, close loopholes, and shut down the iron pipeline. We will not allow the men and women of the New York City Police Department to be subjected to further danger, making their already difficult jobs even more harrowing. And this is something the Commissioner and I are committed to and will stay focused on. And we will not allow a city of tolerance and freedom to become an armed camp of fear and distrust. We will do all that we can to keep New York the safest big city in America and a beacon of freedom for the world. And working with the City Council and the leadership there, we will continue to make it a priority for New York City, and it will continue to be our #1 pursuit. And again, I want to thank our partners here, both in uniform and out of uniform, our lawmakers and lawyers and attorneys who looked over this law and looked over the decision from the Supreme Court to have a responsible and expeditious response to meet this day of September 1st so that we can ensure that this city will continue its pursuit to be a safe city in America. I want to bring on our partner in this pursuit, the Speaker of the City Council, Speaker Adrian Adams.
Thank you very much, Mayor Adams. Good morning. Thank you, Governor Hochul. Thank you, Mayor Adams. Thank you, Police Commissioner Sewell, for your focus, your attention and partnership on this very important issue that impacts the safety of all New Yorkers. The gun violence facing our nation has worsened in recent years, and New York City has not evaded the crisis. So far this year, our city has seen nearly 900 shooting incidents, resulting in over 1,000 victims of gun violence, and we must never forget the victims of gun violence and the efforts to meet their needs. But the most effective thing we can do is to prevent any more people from being victims of gun violence in the first place. When the Supreme Court issued its misguided decision in Bruin versus New York State Rifle and Pistol Association earlier this year to strike down New York's concealed carry law, it presented a major challenge to keeping New Yorkers safe. I joined my council colleagues in calling on our partners at the state level who possess the authority to regulate our criminal and gun-related laws, to enact sensible legislation limiting the locations where a person can carry a weapon, including in the Times Square area. Leaders like Governor Kathy Hochul, State Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie. They acted very swiftly and responsibly to directly address this issue within the parameters of the law. They passed critical regulations to prioritize safety, including the designation of sensitive areas where carrying a concealed firearm would be restricted. Times Square was one of those areas. The state law authorized New York City to determine the details of this regulation at the local level. Just yesterday, the Council's Committee on Public Safety heard my proposed legislation to define the boundaries of Times Square for the purposes of enforcing this new state law. This is critical to protecting Times Square, a central hub for our city and the crossroads of the world, from becoming a dangerous environment with firearms being broadly carried. The Council has worked closely with the administration to develop this legislation, and we will continue our collaboration to enact it into law. With the state law set to take effect tomorrow, we have also been working with the administration to implement emergency administrative rules by the NYPD to designate and implement the Times Square sensitive area as soon as the state law goes into effect. As I said at yesterday's hearing, legal and illegal guns alike cause violence. I'm hopeful that with these new regulations being announced today, our city council legislation, and other initiatives, we can certainly stem the tide of gun violence, limit the overproliferation of deadly firearms, and invest in solutions that keep our communities and our city safe. With today's announcement, our city will begin the important work of informing residents and visitors about these new laws and designated areas where concealed guns are restricted. This is a very important step, and we will remain vigilant and tireless in our efforts to address the gun violence crisis. I echo the sentiment of our governor and our mayor. This is a surreal moment that we are in as New Yorkers. The United States Supreme Court has indeed taken us backwards. But we as New Yorkers and leaders in this city and state will continue to the best of our ability to keep our citizens safe and to keep any madness from proliferation onto the boundaries, streets, homes, lifestyles of our citizens of New York. Thank you very much, and it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce our Police Commissioner, Commissioner Keishant Sewell.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor Hochul, Mayor Adams, Speaker Adams, the City Council, our local, state, and federal partners who we work with every step of the way. I want to assure all New Yorkers that your NYPD is prepared for this change. Since the Supreme Court decision in June, the department has been educating our officers about the decision, the new state law, and recent changes to our own licensing rules. New York City has always had gun-free zones, such as New York City parks. This new law expands the number of gun-free zones. The new laws and our rules properly balance the licensee's rights with keeping the public safe, which is what we do. The NYPD is the firearm licensor for New York City, and we take this responsibility very seriously. As part of our new laws and rules, eligibility requirements must be met by applicants who are seeking a permit. As a licensor, we have a responsibility to intake applications, review those applications thoroughly, and investigate the applicants. Equally important, however, is that a police department, as we are, we ensure that all relevant gun laws and rules are complied with, including those that will now take effect. Where there are suspected violations of the law, the NYPD will respond, investigate, and take the necessary action. While the landscape may be changing when it comes to legal firearm possession in New York City, our goal is always to ensure public safety and responsible gun ownership as part of this public safety calculus. Lastly, I want to be clear about the impact of the Supreme Court's decision. Unlicensed firearm possession remains illegal in New York City. The department's approach to detecting, interdicting, and apprehending those who commit these crimes and possess firearms illegally remains unchanged. And this administration and this department have been intensely focused on this issue. As the mayor stated, we have seized over 4,700 firearms so far this year, and our firearm arrests are up. We are seeing a 10% decline in shootings and homicides so far this year. The administration and the department have committed substantial city resources to combat gun violence. This decision does not impact our ability to effect arrests, assist communities, and fight those who commit gun violence. We remain focused on the safety of the citizens of New York City. This law does not change that focus. Thank you. I would like to introduce our partner, First Deputy Superintendent Nigrelli.
Thank you, Commissioner. And good morning. I would like to take the time to acknowledge someone I've known for a long time, someone I look up to, and thank Governor Kathy Hochul for your leadership throughout the years, but your leadership on this topic, Governor. Your laser-like focus on eradicating guns, illegal guns, and gun crimes in our communities. We appreciate that at the State Police. You've also demonstrated your commitment by providing additional resources, both personnel and analytical tools that help us do our jobs in making our community safe by removing illegal guns. The hallmark of Governor Hochul is always partnerships. And early on, it was stated, if we're going to be successful, we can't go alone. We need a partner. And we found the greatest partner in the world, NYPD. Commissioner Sewell, thank you for what you and your organization does. With NYPD and our federal, state, and local partners, we started looking at illegal guns, and guns coming into our state, our great state. And through this collaborative effort, historic numbers of illegal guns have been taken off the streets, and thus, Governor, saving lives. I also would like to take time to thank our partners in state government, various levels in state government, who work so diligently to making sure that we're ready for the law being enacted tomorrow. We ensured that the lawful, responsible gun owners have the tools now to remain compliant with the law. But those who choose to violate this law, to continue to funnel illegal guns in this state, Governor, it's an easy message. I don't have to spell it out more than this. We'll have zero tolerance. If you violate this law, you will be arrested. Simple as that. Because the New York State Troopers are standing ready to do our job to ensure all communities are safe and all laws are enforced. Thank you once again, Governor. Thank you, everyone, this morning.
Well, at this point, we'll take some on-topic questions. I'd like to bring up the mayor, of course, and members of my team and his team for response. Our counsel, Liz Fine, Marco Soler, Deputy Secretary of Public Safety, Joe Popkin, Executive Deputy Commissioner, and Steve Nigrelli. You just heard if there's any questions on the specifics of what we're doing here today.
Governor, what does somebody do?
Wait. This is not the Wild Wild West.
Are you calling on people?
Madam Governor, how are you going to enforce the sensitive locations part of all this? Is this going to be more law enforcement in those areas, or there's going to be, police officers are going to be checking whether people have concealed weapons? And if someone is carrying illegally, what's the penalty? What's a crime?
Good questions, and of course we're going to be enforcing this. We're not doing anything differently. Right now, law enforcement enforces all the guns on the books. They're going to continue doing the enforcement. It's going to be a challenge when you think about it, because there will be a small population of people who can legally carry guns, And the question will be for law enforcement to make a determination on whether or not that person has a legal concealed carry permit outside the places we've identified, and there are many that are identified. But also for those who don't have legal guns. How does someone know if they see someone in a location, is that gun in their pocket legal or illegal? And this is the havoc that this Supreme Court decision has created for our law enforcement community who are out there every day. Now there's going to be that question. Does this person have a legal right to carry, or is this a legal gun? So there was a time in our state before the effective date of this Supreme Court decision where it was clear you weren't allowed to carry them anywhere. So I'll have a response. Well, Liz, did you want to address Marcos, you want to address the penalties? Okay.
The penalties for violating the restrictive location and sensitive location provisions in this law are Class E felonies under the Penal Code.
Okay, let's do Matt.
Governor, two questions for you. First, if someone accidentally, who's a legal licensee, carries a gun from a unsensitive to a sensitive area, will that person face a felony? And two, if someone's carrying a gun legally, is there going to be a place to check them? What do they do with that gun when they go from an unsensitive to a sensitive place?
That's why we're launching a massive public relations effort. We are encouraging everyone to follow the law. The law will be very clear to them. We've identified all the parameters of what's legal and what's not legal. It's on our website, frequently asked questions, information getting out to local communities all over the state of New York. So everyone has a responsibility, independent of this, to be aware of the laws, to follow the laws, and there's consequences if they don't. Anything else to add on the legality of this? Okay.
Somebody will be arrested if they go from an unsensitive to a sensitive spot carrying a gun?
Our expectation is that all New Yorkers will follow the laws, yes.
Okay, Juliet.
Yes, good morning, Governor. So is there a plan to either prevent or detect these guns coming into these gun-free zones? And I'm thinking, you have DWI checks at certain checkpoints, or you have bag checks in the transit system. Is there anything that'll be set up in that regard to just check at occasional locations for something like that?
We're working on all the details of continuing monitoring. Again, this is a law enforcement issue. I don't know if the commissioner or the state police want to talk about, what extraordinary measures we would take to enforce on our subways, for example. Commissioner, is there any? Sure. You know what you're doing. You do this every day.
So as the governor stated, obviously, our chief concern is education and compliance, obviously. I think the NYPD and obviously our partners as well have some of the best detectors of firearms there are, and we're going to continue those efforts. If we see a need for further checks, obviously we can explore that as an option. But as it stands now, we have the signage that'll be put in place, and we'll have officers that'll be posted in these areas as well. If there is a concern or a report of someone in one of the sensitive areas or a restricted area with a firearm, we will dispatch our officers to that location. They will conduct an investigation and then take the appropriate action.
Physical search that anybody will be doing, or checkpoints at some of these, intersections or corners, anything like that?
If there is reasonable suspicion to believe that someone is carrying a firearm, our officers will take action.
Steve.
Governor, I wanted to zero in on the social media aspect of the application process. As I understand it, the Supreme Court basically said you cannot be subjective in any part of the application process. What is it about this social media check? What will be looked at on these accounts, and how will this be an objective process?
I'll get reinforcements on this as well. But this is a modern day opportunity to understand the character of an individual. Because right now the law, and always has been, that you can ensure that people of good character, only people of good character are allowed to have a pistol permit. I used to work in an office as the clerk that used to administer the background checks, and you could go to someone's neighbors and ask them questions about what you saw, activities, or what their reputation was. So this is just a way that those same kind of questions and analysis can be conducted based on more information that's out there that was not there when they did this 10, 20 years ago. So that is simply an extension of understanding the ability of an individual to be able to be authorized to carry a gun. Is there any other analysis on this, Liz?
Thank you. Oops, excuse me. So the Supreme Court made clear that states can continue to have licensing requirements. The Second Amendment rights are rooted in a right of self-defense, not in a right to hurt others or hurt oneself. And the social media requirement to review social media is simply a way of ensuring that a license is issued only to somebody who's properly going to use a weapon. And, you know, as Justice Kavanaugh said in his concurring opinion, licensing regimes to ensure that licenses and guns are only issued to law-abiding citizens are still valid, and this is in furtherance of that.
You used the word proper there, and that was part of the phrase that was struck down by the Supreme Court. How do you define what is proper now if you're only allowed to be objective about it?
The question that the licensing officials will have to review is whether this individual is law-abiding and whether they will use the gun for a lawful purpose. And that's what the social media requirement will be in furtherance of.
Okay, last question for you.
Governor, and also, I also for the mayor, has there been an uptick in permit applications on both the state and the city level since the Supreme Court decision was struck down and the new law was voted on in Albany? And also, for the commissioner, is the plan not to add any new officers to the areas like Times Square and other government buildings?
I'll let the commissioner answer that question, but I'm not sure she's going to telegraph to the people who want to break our laws exactly where our police are going to be. That's just an observation. But yes, there has been an increase in pistol permits applied for, but it is a lengthy process because there's multiple levels involved with mental health background checks, state police background checks, FBI checks, the neighbor analysis. So this does, so even all the rush that we're hearing in, you know, county clerk's offices upstate, because in other parts of the state it is not the law enforcement entity. Sometimes it's sheriff, but many areas it's the county clerk. That won't make a difference because it's who has a permit on the date. Not that you've applied, because it could take many months. I don't know how long it takes in the city. I know upstate it could be 3 months, it can be a year, depending on how long the backlog is. So there could be an increase in people applying. That won't have much bearing on people who don't already have that right today.
Governor, is this a bail-eligible offense?
She had a question, and also.
Okay. So to your question, Times Square, as has been stated earlier, is iconic. It is complex. It is dense. There are over 50 million people that visit Times Square per year. It is covered by Manhattan North, Manhattan South, and the Times Square unit. We always evaluate where we deploy our resources. If there is a need to increase those resources, we will do so. But as it stands now, we have a robust detail that is assigned to the Times Square area. We do have an increase in the number of license applications, about 54% since June.
Governor, Governor, is this a bail-eligible offense?